Welcome and thank you for standing by. All participants are in listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I will turn the call over to your host, Deb Rivera. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited to bring you today's webinar event. Our session will focus on the mapping feature in data.census.gov and how to get the most out of it. Our presenter will show you the basics, like how to get started with the map feature, useful tips and tricks, but also how to render a map from selected variables and how to create a map from scratch. My name is Deb Rivera, and today I'm joined by my colleagues, and we will be providing support for our speaker. We will also be monitoring the chat to send you helpful links and also answer as many questions as we can. But before I hand things off, I will go over just a few housekeeping items. We are recording the webinar today, and all of the materials for the training will be available through the Census Academy website. We will also be taking questions at the end of the webinar. Participants who would like to ask a question are welcome to use the raise hand icon, which appears next to your name in WebEx, and that will prompt us to open up your line. And at that point, you'll be able to unmute yourself to ask your question. Please note that the Q&A session will focus mainly on the platform data.census.gov. We will not be able to go in depth to address questions on 2020 census products or data. But with that, thank you again so much for joining us. And now I'd like to hand things off to our presenter, Tyson Weister. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Deb. And thank you all so much for joining the webinar this afternoon on Mastering Complex Geographies on data.census.gov. My name is Tyson Weister, and I work on the communications team for data.census.gov, the microdata access tool, and our public API. As Deb mentioned, today we're going to focus on accessing data through maps and also complex geographies and the filters. So before I get into that, just going to give a little bit of background information about geographies available at the Census Bureau and the way that we tabulate our data across different types of geography. Once we have that background, we're going to move into the primary section, which is tips and a live demonstration of complex geographies. I'll show you how to use both the summary level filters in the geography panel to select complex geographies, as well as the default geographic entity view. We'll show you how to create maps both for verification selection purposes, as well as how to map data on the site. And then I'll also show you how to access geographic components. Right, before we get into this, just want to paint a picture of a starting point for geography hierarchy at the Census Bureau. This is a very helpful chart produced by our geography division to show many of the types of geographies that we provide at the Census Bureau and how they relate to one another. So specifically, this shows you we provide data from the national level all the way down to geographies as small as census blocks, block groups, and tracts. And then this also shows you the relationships between the geographies. So anytime you see a lower level geography connected to a higher level geography by a direct line, that tells you that geography fits neatly or nests within that geography. So for instance, you see places, which is what we refer to typically, what you think of as your city or town, has a direct line connected up to states. So that means that places will not cross state level boundaries. They fit neatly within states, but they don't have any relationship necessarily to counties, congressional districts, or American Indian areas because there is no direct line from place to those areas. We're going to revisit this chart later on. Again, this is a summary of the full geographic areas that we provide data for, but on top of that, we slice and dice geographies in a variety of ways. When you're working on our site, there's actually 247 different summary levels or types of geographic areas that you can get data for on data.census.gov. So in the majority of our training sessions, we provide information on how to access data from the most popular geographies. This session on mastering complex geographies is going to show you how to access some of those more detailed geographies and all the tips and tricks you need to know. First thing to keep in mind, though, is that the geographic availability for those 247 areas depends on the data set that you're working with. So what you're going to see, generally speaking, is the largest coverage from the decennial census, which is one of the programs we have on our site, of course. For instance, the 2010 Census Summary File 1 covers 195 different summary levels. The next breadth of coverage would be provided from the American Community Survey. So as an example, the American Community Survey 5-year detailed tables cover 88 different summary levels. Moving on, you'll also get data on our site from the Economic Census and selected surveys. Taken together, they cover about 15 summary levels. And then we also have a few summary levels provided through the Population Estimates program. We're also still working to onboard those tables to our site more fully. So just to keep in mind, highest level of geographic coverage from the decennial census and American Community Surveys, where you're going to get the most detail, and less geographic detail through the other surveys and programs. For today, we're going to be working with decennial census and American Community Survey. If you'd like to learn more about the data sets on our site and what years and vintages are available for each of the different surveys and products, you can visit the link on the right-hand side of this slide. So with that in mind, all the different geographies we have, the way they're related, and the different ways we slice and dice those geographies, to come up with 247 levels that you can access data for. Want to show you the tips and tricks, starting with the summary level filter. So anytime you want a complex geography, the summary level tab is a great way to start. A couple things that I like about the summary level tab: they are the only way to access all available summary levels on data.census.gov. They are organized numerically by the 3-digit code, and they uniquely identify the level of geography you're selecting. So in other words, if you already know that 3-digit code for your geography, this is going to be the easiest and most precise way for you to select that geography and not inadvertently select a different level of geography. So we're going to talk more about this in just a moment, and also how to go about reading what those lists of different geographic areas mean. So I mentioned earlier, we have data for full geographic areas, and we also slice and dice our geographies and tabulate data for partial areas. So just to take a look at this a little bit more closely, on the left-hand side of the screen, I'm showing a map for summary level 250, which is American Indian Area, Alaska Native Area, and Hawaiian homelands. And specifically, the map that I'm showing is where I selected the Navajo Nation Reservation and off-reservation trust land. You can see that this area spans multiple states: Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. So if you wanted data representing this entire geographic area, which would be the most popular way to get data for the Navajo Nation, that would be the summary level that you would be using. We also provide different ways to slice and dice geographies. So as an example, perhaps you're interested in accessing data just for the portion of the Navajo Nation Reservation and off-reservation trust land that falls within Arizona. Well, we have a geographic type specifically to allow you to get data for this area. It's through summary level 260, and you'll notice the label here is showing Arizona part, and my map on the right-hand side of the screen shows that I've selected just that portion within the state. So with these examples in mind, the great way to access data for these types of areas is through using the summary level tab, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to go about reading what you'll be looking at in the filters. When you're working with full areas, or your intention is to select a full area, typically what you want to look for are labels that have short, clean information, not a lot of extra words at the end of them, or the phrase fully, partially. Those are all indications that you're going to be getting data for the primary full geographic area, regardless of what other boundaries it may or may not cross. So as this example, you can see the summary level 250. It says American Indian Area, Alaska Native Area, Hawaiian homeland. There is a label that I've underlined here with that fully, partially language. We'll talk more about that in a later example. And then we show you the label for the Navajo Nation. In comparison, when you start working with geographies that will excuse me, the partial areas, those will be indicated through typically dashes or the word part in the label. So we were talking just a moment ago about summary level 260 and showed you the map. The filter for that, notice at the end of American Indian Area, Alaska Native Area, Hawaiian Homeland, it has a dash and then it says state. So that's an indication that I'm getting the American Indian Area broken out by state. And then when I go to actually select the geography, right there at the beginning, it says Arizona and part in parentheses. Those two dash and part are those indications that I'm getting data for a partial area. So those are some of my best recommendations for working through that filter panel, but you'll also occasionally see a label that says within. When you see a label that says within, you'll actually need to consult the geographic hierarchy that I opened up this presentation with. Within can either refer to a full area or a partial area. And what you'll be looking for are those direct lines connecting the two areas. So as an example, on data.census.gov, you'll see summary level 160, place within state, and you see a direct line from place to state. We talked about this earlier. That means it nests neatly within, and you would be getting data for the full area. In comparison, summary level 158 says census tract within place. So when I look to this hierarchy, I don't see a direct line between census tract and place. So that means that that summary level would give me data for the portion of the census tract that falls within my city or town. I mentioned how we have 247 summary levels. There is a tip and trick if you'd like to narrow down just to the list of geographies that's relevant to the data you want to select. So for instance, you can select your data set first, like the American Community Survey estimates 5-year detailed tables. You can see in the screenshot here, I selected it, it's in the upper left, and then I click on the geography filter panel and turn on summary levels. This gives me a list only of the summary levels that are compatible with that selection rather than the full list of summary levels. So it's just a great way to hide incompatible options from your view and work with the options that are going to make sense for the data you're interested in. So actually, we're going to take a look at this on the live site now. I'm going to pull up American Community Survey poverty total for the Navajo Nation within the state of Arizona. Going to the live site, I'm going to go to data.census.gov. On the landing page, today we're going to be working exclusively with the advanced search. Advanced search is the only way to access the full set of geographies. And then on the left-hand side, I know that I want poverty data from the American Community Survey, so I'm going to select my survey first to show you that tip. On the left-hand side, click Survey, choose American Community Survey. It'll ask for 1 or 5 year. 5-year will give you the greatest geographic coverage for this particular data set. So I'll choose 5-year estimates. And then I want the detailed poverty data, so I'll choose detailed tables. Once you've made that filter selection, you'll see the filter shows in the upper left, ACS 5-year estimate, detailed tables. Now I'll click Geography on the left. By default, you'll be placed in Geographic Entities tab. We'll talk more about this here in just a moment. For this example, we're showcasing and highlighting the Summary Levels tab. So I'll click Summary Levels. I'm getting a list of the 88 summary levels that are compatible with the ACS 5-year estimate detailed tables, and they're ordered by that 3-digit code. So once I get to 250, I start seeing American Indian Area, and I want the portions of the American Indian Area by state. So reading through this list, I see 260, American Indian Area, Alaska Native Area, Hawaiian Homeland, -state. So that's the option I'm going to click. As I'm working through this, anytime you click a folder, you're going to get more detailed options to choose from, and a checkbox is your final selection. Now, the tip I'm showing you is great to have on hand. What the site's working to do is look through and find the list of all American Indian Area, Alaska Native areas, and Hawaiian homelands and load them on screen. I'll scroll down till I get to Navajo. And then we'll choose Navajo Nation, Reservation, and Off-Reservation Trust Land. The one thing with this tip is the time to load the options that are available. The system is working to make sure that options it's showing you on screen are compatible with what you've already selected, and it's doing this in real time. So that is putting additional demand in terms of what the site has to go through from a technical standpoint and on the back end, but sometimes waiting for geographic options that are compatible with the data you want and need is well worth the wait. So we'll talk more about other ways you can do this in the future, but definitely wanted to show you that tip. Selecting your survey first, and now I marked the checkbox for Arizona Part, Navajo Nation, and Off-Reservation Trust Land. Last thing, I'll go ahead and specify the topic poverty by clicking on the left-hand side, Topics, Income and Poverty, Poverty, and then the checkbox for poverty. Once you're happy with your search criteria, we have our data set, topic, and geography. I'll click search in the lower right, and then tables at the top. From here, you can browse the list of tables that are available. I'm going to scroll and click into table B17001, poverty status in the past 12 months by sex, by age. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, I see the data that I wanted. Coming from the 2020 ACS 5-year estimates, the universe is the population for whom poverty status is determined. That population is about 99,734 for the geography I selected, and then out of that total number, 37,508 people have income in the past 12 months below the poverty level. And again, this label says that I'm getting data just for the portion of the Navajo Nation reservation and off-reservation trust land that falls within Arizona. Moving on, I want to also show how you can leverage the selection map to verify the geography you selected visually. I'm a firm believer in that seeing something is always helpful to make sense of it. Our maps are a great resource for this. And you can do this for most any geography selection on the site. We do support maps for the most popular types of geographic areas. It covers about 80 of those summary levels available. And what you can do is simply select a geography on the site once you click the filter, and then go ahead and click Maps at the top. And that's the best way to pretty much automatically get zoomed in to the area you selected and visually see if what geography you selected is what you think you selected by looking at it visually on the map. So let's take a quick look at how we can go about doing this. We are going to work with the same geography selection we just did. I'm going to click the U.S. Census logo to start fresh, choose the advanced search, and choose my geography. So just like before, I'll click geography. I'll click summary levels. And this time I didn't choose my data set first. So this panel is going to load up very quickly. I'll click 260. Notice it load up right away. So I'll scroll to Navajo Nation. And then once we click that, we will instantly see the 3 options for Navajo by each of the states. So helpful to use the trick to select your topic or data set first when you are unsure, but once you've really narrowed down and have a sense for which summary level it is that you're working with, by all means feel encouraged to select your geography first in order to get the best performance on the site in the geography panel for the speed you'll get. Now I'm going to click search, and then I'll click maps up at the top. It is zooming me in automatically to the area I selected. And it looks similar to what we saw on the screenshot, right? So you can see it is highlighted in blue. That's our selected geography that we can see in the legend. And it's just a portion of the Navajo Nation that falls within Arizona. Moving on, I want to show you some additional functionality on the site in terms of complex geographies. So for this example, we're going to talk more about the geographic entity filters. That's simply the default geography view that you get to when you click the Geography tab. The benefit of geographic entity is, for the most part, to hide the select geographies from your view. Most of the data users accessing our site have a few handful of geographies that they want to get to, and we are doing our part to help make sure that they don't get lost in one of the other options that are available. Great that the Census Bureau provides data for all of these different pieces of geographies, but it could certainly be overwhelming. So that's where the Geographic Entities tab primarily comes in hand. Once you're there, it will direct you to the most common geographies. However, there is one portion of the geographic entities that allows you to drill into something that's unique to that view that you actually can't get through the summary level tab. So we're going to talk more about that. First, just want to show you, again, the primary function of geographic entity view is to highlight the 9 most commonly used geographic levels at the top, and then it gives you an alphabetized list of all other geographies below without any codes, just words that users would recognize a little bit more easily. And then once you click on any of those options I just showed you on the previous screen, what the site's going to do is take you to the pathway for the most common summary level for that geography. That's going to give you data for the full geographic area, regardless of other boundaries that it may or may not cross and other ways that we provide the data. So when you click county, for instance, you'll first be prompted to either choose all counties in the U.S. or narrow down a state. And then once you go through that panel, it will ask you to choose either all counties in the state or an individual county. And as long as we don't click into anything else other than the folders or checkboxes in that default pathway, we know we would be getting data for the entire county. If you want data for complex areas, there is something called Within Other Geographies that you may have seen on the previous slides. By default, it's going to be collapsed, but you can expand within other geographies by clicking the plus sign or the word or phrase, and that's going to serve 1 or 2 functions. In some cases, that's just going to be really a different way that you could get to some of the more complex summary levels related to counties. So in this case, I click within other geographies and see if I wanted the portion of the county within an urban area or the portion of a county within a New England city or town area. I could click into one of those tabs and work my way down towards different summary levels. And you can see I've listed those out here, the pathways that those would take you to. This would be the exact same way as if you had clicked into the summary level tab and chose one of those numbers and worked down the pathway. However, the Within Other Geographies option also sometimes gives you the ability to select collections of geographies in a single click that aren't available in the summary level view. And specifically, those are the collections of geographies that tend to have fully, partially within the label. And we're going to take a look at this here in our next example. But what I'm showing you here on the screenshot is zip code tabulation area, 5-digit, and I've clicked into the state for Kentucky. And then at that point, I drilled into Within Other Geographies, and it's asking me, do I want zip code areas within the different counties in Kentucky or the different places in Kentucky? So let's talk more about this here in just a moment. And with these options, just want to point out as well that if you're ever unsure of which summary level you're getting data for, it's very easy on the site to make sense of that. All you have to do is mark the checkbox for the geography for whatever filter panel you're in, and a geography portion is going to be added to the URL. It starts with G equals, and then it gives the geo ID. Here you can see I've selected the filter panel ZICTA 5 40361, and then the geo ID was added. When you select an individual geography, like a single zip code tabulation area, you'll see the summary level is indicated by the first 3 characters in the URL. Anytime you select an option to choose a collection of geography in bulk, like all 5-digit zip code tabulation areas fully or partially within Lexington, Kentucky, notice that the GeoID is much longer in the URL on data.census.gov for this. If you're looking for the summary level that the end data are going to give you, you want to pay attention to the 3 characters after %24. So in this case, we can see 860 is the summary level based on the screenshot that we're showing. And the importance of all of this is that 860 is the summary level that provides data for entire zip code tabulation areas. So we're going to visualize what this looks like on the map in just a moment. So let's go ahead, select this geography, and map out median age for all zip code tabulation areas in Lexington City, Kentucky. The point is to show you how to navigate the Within Other Geographies option of the filter panel, and then to show you what types of data in geographic coverage this provides information for. So going to the live site, I'll click the U.S. Census logo in the upper left. Now I'm going to choose the advanced search. And on the left-hand side, I'm going to start with my geography by clicking Geography. By default, we're in the Geographic Entities tab. These are the 9 most commonly used areas in that alphabetized list. I want zip code tabulation area, so I'm going to choose the box here right in the middle. It's asking me to select all zip code areas in the U.S. or pick a state. I'm going to choose Kentucky. And then from here, I'm going to click one of the options. Just to show you, I click ZICTA 538079. Notice the summary level in the URL says 860. So I haven't clicked into anything else. This is an indication that 860 is the summary level that gives me data for the full zip code tabulation area in its entirety. So that's helpful information. But I want all of the zip code tabulation areas within Lexington, and I've clicked through the prompts. The default pathway is not asking me to choose places in Kentucky, but there is this Within Other Geographies option, and it will give you whatever options are available for this combination of geographies based on the filter section that you're in. I recommend exploring these, and you can see there's an option that says place. So I'm going to choose the place option. Now it asks me to choose my city, so I will scroll down and choose Lexington. Lexington, Fayette, Urban County, Kentucky. So here's where I get a list of the individual zip code areas in Lexington. They're either fully or partially within the city, or the option at the top to select all of those zip code tabulation areas in bulk. Again, we're seeing fully, partially language. That means we're going to get data for the full zip code area, regardless if they cross other boundaries. And in the URL, we can see directly after %24, it says 860. So that's the summary level that we're working with, full zip code areas. Next, I'll go ahead and choose topics, populations and people, and age and sex. So we want median age for these areas. I have my topic, my geography. I'll click search in the lower right, and then tables at the top. The first table says age and sex. Let's take a look at this a little more closely. I get data for zip code, and it says ZICTA 540361. Notice there's nothing at the end of the label that references Lexington. That's another indication that this geography selection is providing data for the entire zip code tabulation area. Scrolling through the table, looking for median age, I can see that this first result happens to have data on median age. In the first zip code area, it's 41. So now that I know I have this data in a table format, as I scroll to the right, I could see median age across these other zip code areas. We also have the option to map this out on our site. So all you have to do is click Maps from here. You'll want to make sure that you're clicked into the table that contains the data you want to map out. We can see that with the orange bar and shading, that our map has recognized our selection and zoomed us into our desired area, and that the boundaries are set to the zip code tabulation area level. So we can see that as we zoom in on the map visually. You can also confirm by clicking into the layer button and making sure it's set to zip code tabulation area. This all happens pretty seamlessly when you have one type of geography selection. And the last step would be for us to tell the site, out of all of those variables from that data table, which one do we want to show on the map? All you have to do is click Variables, click into the drop-down menu, and these are organized in the same way that the columns and rows are. So you could scroll through the list or make use of the search option if you'd like to get there a little bit quicker. Here I type in median age, and the label that I want is the total column. That provides total population from the summary indicator section of the table, and the row was median age years. Once I click that data variable, notice my map has been updated. And we'll adjust the zoom here a little bit. You can see the legend in the lower left shows that zip code tabulation areas with darker shades of blue have higher median age. I can zoom in and see the street lines and street labels. I can click an individual zip code tabulation area and see for ZICTA 40516, the median age was 44.3. Now, the last thing I want to show you here is related to the geography boundaries. There is an additional button at the top of the table called Style. And what that does is allows you to choose additional levels of geography to show on your map. And they're just for reference purposes. So I'm going to choose the checkbox to display the boundary line and boundary label at the place level. We, again, we're working with zip code tabulation areas fully or partially contained in Lexington. So let's see what this looks like on the map. So I marked both of those checkboxes. I'll click the Style button again. Notice in the lower left of my legend, I'm still getting the zip code tabulation area boundaries in purple, and then the place level boundary in that caramel color. I can see the label for Lexington Fayette, and then I can zoom in. So this will give you a sense as to the data that you're getting. Notice the city boundary here. I can see this caramel colored line running through the map, and a little piece of ZICTA 40361 falls within Lexington. But if you zoom out more and follow the boundary, we can see really the rest of this whole zip code tabulation area doesn't fall within Lexington. But what we were getting in our table view and in the map view is data for that entire zip code tabulation area, regardless of how much of it falls within Lexington. So just wanted to point those options out to you. There are many different ways you can select geographies on the site and different tools on how to make sense of what those labels mean, both through the fully, partially, part, or dash language in the label, as well as visually here on the map that we went through in these last two examples. Moving on to another complex geography you may be interested in, geographic components. We offer data for components of a geography. To visualize what this means, I'm showing a screenshot of all of the urban areas and urban clusters. And I have my map kind of centered here on Alabama. So what this is showing are the areas contained in the boundaries in red would be urban areas and urban clusters. When you access data for a geographic component, you would be accessing data for a single number for the entire urban population within the state of Alabama. So it wouldn't be an individual cluster you would be looking at. It would be the totality of all of the red within Alabama you're seeing on the screen. We do have many ways of providing data for geographic components. I've listed some popular ones on the right-hand side of the screen in case you're interested, urban, rural, as well as breaking out by metropolitan statistical area or other types of geographies. When you want to access data for geographic components, what you'll do is select the primary geography you're interested in. Here, as an example, I've selected the geography filter panel for state. And then if geographic components are available for that level of geography, you'll see a tab at the top that says Show Geographic Components. So all you have to do is click that tab and then scroll through the list to find what you're looking for. Let's take a look at how we can use the Advanced Search Filter panel on the site to access urban and rural data for Alabama. And I'm going to pull up this data for total population. Going back to the live site, I'll click the U.S. Census logo in the upper left and choose Advanced Search. We'll select our geography, clicking Geography on the left. And then again, you want to start with your primary geographic level. So I want the urban-rural portion of Alabama. I'll click here on State. I see a tab at the top that says Show Geographic Components. I'll click the tab, and it is loading all of the geographic components in order here. So I get Alabama. The clean label would be data for the full state of Alabama, and all of these other options are for the different geographic components that you can access data for. You'll notice the list is quite lengthy just for Alabama. So I'm going to scroll and select Alabama Rural, and then Alabama Urban. So just those short, clean labels, that's what's going to give me urban versus rural in the state, and I'll go ahead and select Alabama as well. Next, you'll go ahead and choose your topic. Here I want data for total population. I'll choose populations and people, counts, estimates, and projections, and population total. Big focus is the geography selection. We'll go ahead and run our search, and then click on Tables at the top. And we haven't released geographic components data yet for the 2020 census, but if we go back to the 2010 census, Summary File 1 is one of the options that have data for this geography. So you'll definitely want to pay attention to what product you're clicked into in order to get the data that you're looking for. And here we can see data for the portion of Alabama in an urban area. And this is the population that lives in the urban areas, about 2.8 million. And the population living in rural Alabama, a little more than 1.9 million. So you may have noticed the list I was scrolling through Alabama was quite lengthy, so you could certainly scroll to get to other states. However, you may be interested in shortcuts for how to go about customizing these selections to change your state. One way that you can do that is by editing your URL. Remember earlier we've been talking about how the summary level is contained in the URL. There's a lot of other information as well. This is a slide that breaks down that for you, and the geography portion of the URL is at the top in bold. Again, it starts with G equals, and if there are more than one selection, you'll see either a comma or a underscore separating those different geographic areas. Looking at this first GeoID, the first 3 characters is the 3-digit summary level code. The next 2 characters is the geographic variant. 01 refers to the type of geographic component. In this case, 01 means urban. US for United States. And then the last 2 characters for 01 is the GeoID FIPS code. For the state of Alabama, it's 01. I've done some research by looking at the FIPS code for Georgia using the link at the bottom of this slide and found that the FIPS code for Georgia is 13. So if you want to change the selection in a quick way, you can edit the URL. So let's take a quick look here on the site. Again, we're going to update total population in urban and rural Georgia. Once we get to our table, what I'll do is click into these options and replace the state code 01 that appears after US with 13. And I'll do this for each of my 3 options. Then I'll press enter. And we'll give it just a moment to load. Notice that the filter panel is showing that it's updated my geography selection from Alabama to Georgia across all 3 geographies, and then I see that information displayed here on my screen for my updated geography. So you can use this method of changing the GeoID for any geography selection you'd like to use. We typically find it very beneficial in this specific use case. And before we start transitioning over to questions, just also want to cover geographies with frequent name changes. The last time we gave this Complex Geographies webinar, this was a major part of what we covered. The reason for that is that the filter panels had many labels. For instance, if you wanted to select State Senate District 24 in Arizona, you would see 6 different labels to choose from. And each of those labels would only be compatible with the data that were tabulated for that specific boundary. Similar for metropolitan, micropolitan statistical areas. In the case of Phoenix, they've changed their name over the course of the years from Phoenix Mesa Scottsdale, Phoenix Mesa Glendale, and Phoenix Mesa Chandler. And you would have had to know to either choose all 3 right off the bat or choose the one that was compatible. Maybe you just want the most recent data for Phoenix. You would have had to know what was the most recent label used for Phoenix in order to get you to that data. Since December, we implemented simplified labels on data.census.gov, so you're not going to see that anymore. You will always see one nice, clean label. In this case, we're looking at a label that says Phoenix Mesa Chandler, and once you click that label in our panel, that option is going to work for you to get all of the data over time, regardless of the name changes for that geography. So we don't burden you anymore, requiring you to have to know those different geographic variants. On the front end, we do all the technical work on the back end to make the process seamless as possible. It's not just metro areas in state legislative districts. I have a bulleted list on the left of all of the different types of geographies that these have been applied to. As we start transitioning over to questions, things like simplifying the process to select complex geographies that have variants are all based on feedback from our data users. Please let us know how we can make the site work better for you by clicking the feedback link in the upper right and shooting us an email at census.data@census.gov. We also encourage you to sign up for our email updates. Here we send a monthly newsletter notifying you of the latest system enhancements, data releases, and educational opportunities. Simply visit the link on the left and sign up for data.census.gov updates. And one last thing, we currently have another way for you to let us know what you think of the site through our annual data user satisfaction and needs survey. This is your once in a year opportunity to not only let us know what you think of the site as it currently stands, but you can also share your ideas for other improvements and new features you'd like to see. Whether you're completing the survey for the first time or responded last year, your participation is important to help us build a better data.census.gov. So we look forward to your responses. To get started, look for the link to the survey in the chat now. We'll share it for your convenience. And with that, I will transition over to Deb. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tyson. So in just a few moments, we will begin the question and answer session. But before we do so, before we open up the lines, I'd just like to ask everyone to spare quick 3 minutes to fill out the evaluation for the webinar today. You can do so by using the link that we're about to send in the chat, and just fill that out as you're listening to the Q&A session perhaps. And you can use this opportunity to tell us how we can improve our webinars and what topics you would like covered in future webinars. One final reminder, please note that we will only be addressing questions that pertain specifically to today's topic. If you have questions about navigating the main data data.census.gov platform or decennial census data releases, please feel free to reach out to one of the two email addresses that are listed here. Tyson, can you progress the slide? There you go. Thank you so much. If you are a member of the public, please reach out to the Center for Enterprise Dissemination at census.data@census.gov. And for members of the media, you may contact the Public Information Office at pio@census.gov. And with that, we can go ahead and start transitioning over to the Q&A session. If you have a question and you would like us to unmute your line, please let us know by using the raise hand icon that is located right next to your name in the WebEx panel. Or if you go down at the very bottom of the WebEx screen next to share, there is a little raise hand icon. That will just let us know that you would like your lines unmuted, and we can start the Q&A session. So we'll give that a moment and see if any questions pop up.
And as we're waiting for questions to come in, just also want to let you know that we have a resources page dedicated to help you make the most of data.census.gov. Simply click the help button on the landing page of data.census.gov, and here you'll find educational resources that are free of charge in a variety of formats, whether you're interested in a full-length recorded webinar, short video, answers to your FAQs, or PDFs with step-by-step instructions across a wide variety of topics on the site.
Okay, it looks like we currently do not have any raised hands.
I have a couple questions for you that came in. I just, if we can go ahead and maybe I can share those with you.
Sure.
The first question is the hierarchy map available on the site anywhere? So I think they're referencing the one that you showed earlier in your presentation.
Yeah, could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, the hierarchy map, is that available on the website anywhere?
Oh, yeah, thank you for the question. I certainly pulled it from the Census Bureau website for one of the resources from our Geography division. I don't have the link on hand, but if you email us, we'd be more than happy to find it for you or direct you to the Geography division experts that would certainly be able to find that link for you.
Okay. And I'll try and see if I can track it down. I think I've seen the page before. Another question, just kind of clarification. So for data for urban and rural areas for the decennial census, is that available right now for 2020?
Data for urban rural has not been released for the 2020 census yet, but I would expect it would be coming in the future. I do know the Geography division has some geography information as far as how urban rural will be defined for 2020. That's on the horizon to be released this summer, but that's just the geographic definition of urban rural. And then as far as tabulating data against that geography later, that has not happened yet and would not happen until the future.
Okay. Kind of related to that, is there an easy way to get urban and rural information by state without clicking each state individually?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That is actually a good transition here to take you over to our resource page. So the FAQs are linked in the help section. That was the slide I was talking about, just as we were transitioning, waiting for questions to come in, or a direct link to FAQs. And then over here, there should be a link. How do I select geographic components such as urban, rural? And I created some quick links here to give you that selection already. So this will show you the step-by-step process that I went through on the site, but at the top is the answer to your question. If you wanted all states that were in urban area, or the urban portion of each state, you would open up that link. And I'm having a hard time with my tabs here to click on it, but that is the geography selection already done for you. So you'll see Oklahoma urban, Texas urban, Arizona urban. That's all based off of the information in the URL. And from here, you could add a filter, for instance, total population or something of that nature, and then access the tables that are available without having to scroll through that long list and click all of that for yourself.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyson. I guess we can do like maybe one more sweep. Anyone has any questions? Anything? I guess, can we check and see if any came in through the line?
So it looks like we currently do not have any raised hands.
Okay. I see we just got one more question. Is there a way to get race and ethnicity breakdown by zip code using the advanced search for the most recent census?
Yeah, thank you for the question. For the 2020 census, the current tables that are released, there's 6 tables from the redistricting data set. There is some high-level information on race and ethnicity in those tables, and we cover a lot of that in some of our other surveys. However, those tables have not yet, well, the tables are not produced for zip code tabulation area geographies, but that level of geography would typically be included with the future releases. So the next release of 2020 census data is expected to happen in 2023. So that's when you would look for the zip code level data for that topic. And in the meantime, if you wanted data at the zip code level for race and ethnicity, the most recent available data would be from the American Community Survey. We do have the 2020 ACS 5-year estimates, and those do cover zip code tabulation area data. Or you could access the 2020 decennial census data for another type of geography. There were many geographies included with the release of those 6 tables I was referencing, all the way down to the census block level.
Great.
And I did have a couple additional information just as we wrap up. I wanted to let you know about how you can get future training opportunities. If you have a training request on data.census.gov, we'd be more than happy to take your request if you email us at said.outreach@census.gov. And this webinar is provided as part of census.gov/academy, which is the centralized training hub for the Census Bureau. Here you'll find training across a wide variety of topics all in one place, not necessarily just the ones related to data.census.gov. And we also have data dissemination specialists located throughout the country. So if you were a local organization, or perhaps you wanted a training request on something related to the Census Bureau but not data.census.gov, you can shoot them your request at census.askdata@census.gov. And once again, just want to thank everyone for tuning into the webinar today, and we look forward to seeing you in a future webinar.
This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.